Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Sydney Embray. I'm a city planner on the City of Omaha's comprehensive plan team. I work in long-range planning, along with a lot of other folks who are doing really excellent work to do some long-range planning over a 20-year time frame for what our city's growth and development looks like. I want to get to the meat of this presentation tonight, which is talking about talent attraction, talent retention, slowing brain drain in Omaha. It's a topic that's been covered pretty extensively, very heavily lately in the news. We're pretty blessed to have some really great panelists here tonight to help us unpack what some holistic collaborative solutions look like, especially over that long-range time frame, and ways that we can help address those in the comprehensive plan. I do want to give you a little bit of information about the comp plan before I bring up our keynote speaker, Josie Schafer, Dr. Josie Schafer. Hopefully you've gotten a chance to take our survey. We will not show the results tonight, but we will send out a post-event email with the results there so you can see where your answers stacked up against all the other participants tonight.
Can you raise your audio?
I will try. This microphone does not play well with my very floppy shirt. No, you're not rude. It's that kind of honesty we really hope to foster. All right, thank you for letting me know that. I will hold this for the rest. A comprehensive plan, for those who don't know, is a 20-year plan for growth and development in a city. In the state of Nebraska, it is required by state law for a city of our size. Even more extensively, it's covered in our city charter and outlines all the things that it needs to cover, from energy to transportation to land use planning. This is the way that we set the vision for what our city does, looks like, feels like, and grows into over a generation. So we have the opportunity right now to get your feedback, to have you weigh in. We've been doing that over the last year and a half, almost 2 years, and we'll continue to do that until we deliver the plan in end of 2026, early 2027. But this plan is what gives us the basis to do land use regulation. So that's how we determine what land's use should be, how it serves the community, and how we can plan for what the design and the function of that land is over the long term. We are very grateful to be partnered with some great community organizations that help us reach more extensively in our community. Omaha by Design, we've got a couple of team members here tonight who have really, really worked hard to bring this event to life. Abe Luters is kind of our man in the eagle's nest up there, making everything happen. Alex Lakis and Isabel Fleming did a ton of work to get this to happen tonight, so thank you to you all. There are a lot of City of Omaha team members who are also very involved in this process. A lot of them. So if you're here tonight, I see a couple of you. Thank you for everything you've done. We also have some other nonprofit partners who are part of our hub and spoke model who help us reach our communities in North Omaha, South Omaha, and young people. It's very, very important that we engage with young people in this process, and you'll see why. All the engagement that we've done thus far, we've gotten over 52,000 unique pieces of commentary from the community, what they want to see. That's helped us build a vision, the guiding principles. Hopefully you've seen those cycling as you came in tonight. You can also see them on our website. There are 9 statements that show what the future of our city should look like. And those are all based on real feedback from your friends and neighbors. Before we get too far into this, I do want to do a land acknowledgement. This is a land use plan. There are several tribes who call this place their ancestral home and their current home. We want to acknowledge their sovereignty and their purpose and part in this plan, and we are currently engaging with them as well. Omaha's the largest city in Nebraska. We've got a pretty medium to low density across our 146.2 square miles, which is very large. We are a very educated city. 40% of people in this city have a bachelor's degree or higher. That's very high. But at the same time, we're a young city. A third of our population is under the age of 19. So as we're thinking about that 20-year time frame, this generational planning effort, these are the folks that are going to be coming into the workforce. We want to make sure this city is somewhere where they want to stay and make their dreams come true. We're currently, though, in that critical workforce gap, not growing quite as fast as we should. So the latest chamber report shows about 1.5%. Nationally, that's 6%. So we have a little work to do in this area. And our overall population growth is also, 2 different studies project, not going to be very high over this time frame. So as we're looking at overall population growth slowing, not growing very quickly in this area, we have this critical nexus point on what our workforce development, what our population growth looks like if we want the city to continue to grow. We're also at a crossroads as far as how we can grow our city the size of our city, what our city looks like. Since 1960, our land use has more than doubled, but the population's only grown about 63%. So if we continue to grow at this rate, we're going to run out of land completely before we do this comprehensive plan effort again. I can show you what that looks like. The teal is our current city limits. The light aqua color is land that's already been platted for something or already been developed. The white is kind of what's left, and the orange is our growth boundary. So we can't go over the river and take over Iowa, and state law prevents us from going over county lines. And so that western boundary, that kind of squiggly line, that's the ridge line. So that ridge line prevents a topographical change that keeps us from growing over there because we can't lay things like sewer. It would be very, very expensive. So we are faced with a challenge. If we want to continue to grow, if we want this place to continue to be somewhere where people choose to live, our population grows, how do we plan for that growth? What does it look like if that growth isn't necessarily out? The comprehensive plan not only covers land use and that kind of growth planning, but it covers all of these other elements as well. So this is where we see this as being this kind of critical conversation point. As we're planning for the future, how do we address this challenge that we're facing now and know we will continue to face into the future? And that's what our panelists and our lecture presenter, Dr. Josie Schafer, are here to answer for us today. I'll give her a short introduction here. Dr. Schafer leads UNO's Center for Public Affairs Research, Nebraska's go-to source for data and analysis, and the State Data Center for the U.S. Census Bureau. She cultivates community-engaged research and produces action-oriented insights. A sought-after speaker, she shares findings from major reports on entrepreneurship, healthcare, youth, and transit. Welcome, Dr. Schafer.
Thank you. Good evening, how are y'all? Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Sydney, thank you for that introduction. The mission of our center is to collaboratively produce and disseminate high-quality public scholarship on topics that impact the lives of Nebraskans and our region. And these sort of population growth topics are so important to all of us. Do y'all want to grow Omaha? Are you sure? No, I'm not kidding. Like, I do a lot of stuff out in rural Nebraska. They're not always sure. So I want to be sure that that is a goal of ours. So when I talk about this data, we're all kind of level set that that is why we are talking about this, that we are interested in growth. Maybe not all growth, but what does growth look like and how do we do it well? So I'm excited to be with you. We do a lot of this work by using census data, and that's what you're going to see a lot of tonight from a range of different sources. We are so glad they're back open. So as Sydney said, I'm going to talk about, when I talk about Omaha, I'm mostly talking about the metropolitan statistical area, which is a little larger than the city limits, but it gives us some access to data that I think is pretty useful. So 2024 population estimates from the U.S. Census Bureau pushed us over this million mark, and everyone was really, really excited, and I was like, I don't know, we were probably there before. The reason that we were probably over that million mark before is that the Census Bureau updated how they're counting international migration. They are using more administrative records, and that data is a little bit stronger. And so every state, every MSA saw big jumps in those numbers. It wasn't some influx of folks, but it was a jump in the count, so it put us over that million mark. And that is truly a main source of growth for us. So since 2020, Omaha MSA has grown 3.3%. Please do not let anyone tell you we're not growing. We're growing population, we're growing jobs, we're growing the economy. The question is, are we growing as much as y'all want, right? Is the growth what it could be or should be? Is it in the areas we want? But we are growing at 3.3%. You can see how that compares here to some of our Midwest peers. Sometimes I'll compare Midwest, sometimes I'll compare national. And there's three ways population can grow. Natural change, births minus deaths. That's very strong. As Sydney said, we have a young population. That means we're really balancing out our aging adults and sort of growing from within. We're also growing from within the state of Nebraska. We see a lot of rural Nebraskans coming over to the metro areas. Second way you can grow is international migration. Very important source of growth in this area. We would not be growing without some of that international migration. And like I said, those are the numbers that pushed us over that million mark, which can be important for a few reasons. And then domestic migration. People absolutely move to the metro every year. Anybody not from the metro and moved here? Oh, wow. Overrepresented. It's just that more people leave the metro every year than come in, and that means we're net negative for domestic migration. And that's that number that gets everybody going. It's so worrying. And it is worrying. So that puts it at negative 723. When we break it down by some of the demographics, you're going to see that the magnitude gets a little bit larger. The reason, though, like in terms of overall number, is that a huge net loss? No, in any one year it's not, but that has been consistent for the metro for many years. So there's a real cumulative effect. And truly what we know about growth is like growth creates more growth, right? And so when we're losing people, we're losing some of that dynamism that allows us to grow even faster. So we want to keep folks here. And you all already told me that you're pro-growth, you're interested in growth, so we're going to accept that to be true. And then we need to discover why, how to grow. So one of the first things I like to do is look at who's leaving to help us understand what we need to change to retain those folks, right? So we're going to look at it here by age group. And you see across most age groups, it's negative. Everybody hear of the boomerangers? And everyone's like, oh, we have a big boomerang effect. That 40 to 44 age group, that's your boomerangers. Doesn't look like a boomerang shape, does it? But we do have boomerangers, right? So folks come back in that 40 to 44 age group, but pretty much every other age group except for aging adults at 75 and over group are net leaving the state every year. These are net numbers. The one that is so concerning is that prime workforce age. So it used to be that folks were leaving for college. So it was in that 20 to 24 range. And that was kind of like, okay, because they weren't really producing much value. They weren't in the workforce yet. Like, yeah, go to college, do whatever you want to do. But that's not who's leaving. The age group of folks that are more likely to leave has moved up over time. And now we're losing folks that are definitely in the workforce. We have such a high labor force participation rate. I don't have to tell you that any one of these age groups over 25 is in the workforce. It's about 90% labor force participation rate for that prime workforce age. So that's a really scary group to lose at that magnitude. They're making income. This is that same point about work. They are earning. Now, interestingly, this graph for the state looks a little bit different than it does for us. Statewide, it's that 75,000 and over in earnings that's leaving. We're more in that middle income range that's leaving. And that's really interesting to me, too. Has anyone heard that the problem is wages? That might be it. Then, right, we know brain drain. These are the brain drain numbers for Nebraska. These are the numbers that my office has been reporting back since 2010 at least. We have brain drain. That means we're net negative for people with a bachelor's degree or more. That's that red line. I'll also point out statewide, we used to be net positive for those other educational attainment groups, and we've dropped off. So now everyone's leaving. Not everyone. About half of all brain drain is out of the metro area. And I think that might surprise folks. Anybody surprised? There's this, I think when I'm out talking to folks, oh, people are leaving rural areas. No, folks in rural areas are moving to the metro. They're setting up their lives in the metro area, and then they move out of state, which is another big indicator to me as to why they might be leaving. So here it's that black line is bachelor's degree plus. Again, you can see for all of those, we are net negative. The other two groups are bouncing around the zero mark. There's a margin of error on these things. But bachelor's degrees have been consistently negative, and it's about half of all of the brain drain in the state. Here's how we match up to other MSAs on brain drain. It's per 100,000 of population here, so the number looks different, but it allows us to compare a little bit. Some MSAs are brain gainers, some MSAs are brain drainers. You definitely see some patterns here. The Southeast, the Mountain West. Boise's just been popping off with brain gain of late. Omaha, Lincoln, both brain drainers. Again, in overall numbers, is it huge? No, but it is a population of real concern and interest to us. So we definitely want, right, we want those skills in the state. Des Moines has been doing really well on these numbers. Kansas City bopping around. Tulsa sort of turned the tide. They used to be a brain drainer, now they're a brain gainer, so lots to learn there. Also want to look at who moves to Omaha and where they go, and I think this may surprise some folks. So move to Omaha, folks from the Lincoln Metro. So truly they go to UNL, and then their first job right here in Omaha. We're happy to have them. Then you have that international migration. Like I said, it is a really important source of growth for us. This is all MSAs. Where are people most likely to come from Omaha in terms of overall magnitude, not net? Asia, Europe, then Sioux City, and Des Moines. Where are Omahans going to? Lincoln, Denver, Kansas City, Stockton, California, which I don't have an explanation for if anyone would like to help me with. I just did some work in Council Bluffs, and their survey, I asked if they were likely to move, where would they go? Huge number wanted to go to Oregon. I have never seen that from the Midwest, but very supportive. Go where you want to go. Stockton, California, and Des Moines. Anybody surprised? We tend to see a real regional pattern in migration because of social networks, right? The main driver of migration, as we're going to talk about in depth, is economic networks, job opportunities. But if I can get a better job opportunity and still have my social network 3 hours away in Des Moines, 8 hours away in Denver, that one's hard. What's Kansas City? 3 hours, 3.5? Yeah, right, so I'm getting the best of both. I'm increasing my economic network and staying in my social network. That's why a lot of people, right, people guess Florida, Texas, California. That isn't where most people are actually going when they leave the region. They're usually staying regional. Now, do we have the same weather as Des Moines? Do we? I don't know. Do they have snow on the ground right now? So check. Right, but so like there tends to be this argument like we can't compete. And yeah, maybe we can't compete with Denver, but can we compete with Kansas City and Des Moines? Can we compete with Lincoln? Yeah, we absolutely can. So it's really important to think about it's not something we can't do. This is a problem we can solve just because we know where they're going and it's not outside of Stockton, California. There must have been some business that closed and something happened. Okay, so all of that demographic research tells me, right, they're in their prime workforce age, they're highly educated, they're making an income. They're moving to places that I've analyzed have more job opportunities than us. They have more density of job opportunities than us, right? So why are they moving? Workforce opportunity. It is a jobs story, and anybody can talk about whatever they want, and other things do matter, and we're going to talk about that today, but the driving force in why someone will pick up and move to another state is going to be job opportunity. I don't know about y'all, but I need a job. Right? There are things I want to go out and do, and houses I want to buy, and bars I want to visit, and concerts I want to go to, but if I don't have a job, I will not be doing that, right? And so that is why it is such an important driver. Here's another example of this. In 2019, we worked with the Greater Omaha Chamber to find people on LinkedIn who were in Nebraska and had now left. And we said, why'd you leave? And in survey research, no matter the size, when the magnitude is so clear that professional growth and or development was very important, it is, right? I have no questions about this. There's a lot of discussion going on, but the main driver is job opportunity. Now, do we have jobs open in the state, in this MSA? Is anybody trying to hire right now? Is anybody the group of people who are like, I just can't find people to work? I hear that a lot. Or like, Gen Z's the problem. Okay. I'm fine with that. I am not in it. Right, we have jobs open. We want to put people to work. We have such a strong culture of work here across so many metrics that it can be kind of strange to say people are leaving for workforce opportunity. Slightly complicated graph. Ooh, I was right that was the one behind me. I didn't know. Here, what I looked at is brain drain and labor force participation. And there's actually a negative relationship. That means places like Omaha and Lincoln, red and blue over there, we're red, with higher labor force participation rates are more likely to have brain drain. Places where people are working at high rates are more likely to have brain drain. That seems a little weird to us, right? If I just told you it's workforce opportunity. But it's not just any work that matters. It's high wage work. It's high skill work. It's high demand work. 3H jobs, high wage, primary jobs, call it whatever you want. It's good jobs that drive that movement behavior. I don't know about y'all, but I don't want just any job. I want a good job. It's really not that shocking once you think about it. But when we think about workforce opportunity, it's not that ability to have one job, it's that ability to have multiple jobs across your lifetime. So here, what I'm saying, here's a good job, a high-skill job. I've tested it against a bunch of them. I've indexed it. Just believe me. As the number of those jobs being created goes up, right? The percent change in those jobs in a place. So now we're creating more job opportunities in a place. They are more likely to have brain gain. People are moving to those places, not just where there are jobs, and not just where there are good jobs. So it's not just having a high percentage of those jobs. It's that you're growing those jobs. It's the dynamism, it's the growth that is attractive. Because right when you're looking, say you're looking for a job, I don't know how people look for a job these days, but right? I don't want to see there's one job I can apply for. I want to see I can work there, I can work there. If I don't like my boss there, I can jump over there. I can hybrid work here. I can get more hands-on training experience here, right? There's a density of those jobs, and there's creation of new jobs that makes me feel like my future, I don't have to make that big move again. I can stay in that place and advance across my lifespan. So that's where we actually see the brain gain, those places that are growing the number of high-wage jobs. And we show some out there for you. And Des Moines is one of those places. So Denver's one of those places. I don't show them all. So what is a good job? What is a high-wage job? What's a primary job? Whatever language you want to use, we're all saying the same thing. I circled them up there. So here I have the number of people employed in those jobs and then the median wage. Again, it's median. People make more, people make less. But just trying to level set about what those jobs are. Computer, math, legal, architecture and engineering, health diagnosing and treating practitioners, business finance, management, life, physical, and social science. We're going above the 65,000 range. Now, life, physical, and social science here is very underpaid. Not just because I work in it, but because I work in it. Normally that number is over 70,000 in other MSAs, and so there's a reason we're not growing pretty fast in that group. But that's our high wage. Now, we have a fair amount of density in the high wage workforce, that 34% of the entire workforce is in that group. But I'll tell you, a lot of those more dynamic ones have 38, 39, some go over 40. It's not huge numbers of increases, and I want density, I want that number to be high, but I'm more interested in that churn, that growth. Then we have a whole group in that middle wage. The median for the entire workforce is $50,581. That's individual, not household earnings. And that includes both full and part-time, so it's a little lower than you might expect. And then our low wage workforce. And this is for the Omaha MSA. So when I do talk about what is a high wage job, primary job, whatever you want to call it, that's the group I'm talking about. Everyone okay with my definition on that? Okay. So now I want to turn a little bit, well, I'm going to stay there a little bit longer, but I'm going to turn soon. So I am clear that it's workforce opportunity. The comp plan does include economic development, but the comp plan isn't totally about creating workforce opportunity. But, and I've said that people are going to leave for workforce opportunity. But when we want to attract people in, and we want to retain people there, the research there pushes us a little bit more. It's not just so straight and direct having the workforce opportunity. It becomes a little bit more about place and more of the topics that the comp plan will cover, and then we will discuss as a panel. So I want to touch on a couple of those too. This first thing, though, I want to address pay. Okay. So in 2019, when we did that survey on LinkedIn, workforce opportunity was more, and career advancement was more important than pay. In 2019, inflation was nowhere near what it is now. I'll show that to you in a second. And then this is the young professional survey we also did with the Greater Omaha Chamber more recently. And you see here, when we ask folks about their workforce, and they're here, career opportunity is still one of the lowest rated factors, but we saw pay sort of jump up. We're seeing more interest in pay as that driver. I really felt before that it wasn't that I could make more money, it's that my career could have more potential. But we are seeing pay and wages be an issue that we're discussing here in the Omaha MSA, so I didn't want to not touch it. So that's what survey says. Interestingly, when we look at pay growth, low-wage jobs have grown faster in wages than high-wage jobs. And that actually makes total sense to me. When we have a lot of people working in a sector like service or food prep, right? We need people to work. And so if you can't find people to work, because we have such a high labor force participation rate and everybody's already working and we have constricted population, what do you have to do to compete for those workers? You have to pay more. I know some people don't want to admit it, but that's what you do to compete for workers. And so what I'm saying when I say pay is lower, pay growth, right? The overall numbers of high-wage workers are high, but their growth in wages has been slower than those low-wage workers because we are competing more for those low-wage workers. High-wage workers, where there's a lot of that growth in those other places, their pay is going to be better because they're competing for that labor. They're trying to bring people in. Okay, so this dynamic about wages is true. Here you can see over time the bars are, this is from my colleague Chris Decker in the College of Economics, the bars are actual wages. Wages are up, right? 22%, 24%, right? Wages are certainly up over time. Inflation is right there with us. So you could be making more today and not feel it at all, is what this is saying. And actually, I had pulled the most recent data to go out, and the inflation bar is now a little bit higher than us. So like we've been like tracking with it, but now we're actually really feeling it. Inflation is more than that wage growth. Okay, so wages definitely are part of the workforce opportunity story here, and they're particularly important when we're talking about those high-wage, high-skill, high-demand jobs. This is now, again, back to the Young Professional Survey, and we asked about quality of life factors overall, and I just want to point out that 2 of them really were related to costs. So I think this pay issue is really clear, that cost of taxes, right? Taxes are cheap if you have a lot of money, taxes are more if you don't, right? So it's going to show up more, this cost. So in that LinkedIn survey back in 2019, most people said their costs are way higher wherever they went. They wish they were back in Omaha. But here in Omaha, in this inflationary period, we're like, no, it's expensive, right? So I think that's real, and I'm not trying to deny that. Costs are high. Costs of housing are high. I've done whole presentations on this. I won't get into it. But when you look at the overall number, when you compare to these other MSAs, we look fine. But when you look at that growth and the lack of growth in our wages comparatively, we're feeling the cost of housing. Plus all those other costs like insurance and maintenance have gone up a lot as well. You also see 2 now broader quality of life factors that are on this lower rated scale. Walk and bike friendly communities and transit options. Anybody think these are issues in the MSA? There you go. Okay. So really, it was like hard for me. Sydney was like, you can't just talk about workforce opportunity. And I'm like, man, it's all I want to talk about. It's what matters. But then I really pushed myself a little bit and found some research on this high-wage, high-skill group. This is from Richard, Florida. He calls it the creative class. It is the exact same definition. He actually uses educational attainment alone. He doesn't even look at the wages or classes of jobs. And he says this is summarizing a lot of his previous work, 3 main qualities that attach people to a place: social offerings, entertainment venues and places, openness, and the area's aesthetics. But look at that word, right? It's not about the moving to a place, the attracting, it's about the retaining. And I do very much believe retention is attraction. Go back to that population dynamics I mentioned in the beginning. If we can retain our population, that's going to turn into growth because of natural change, but it's also going to start to attract because we're going to have that density and we're going to start creating something. So retention is key as well, and there's more to that story than just job. Just thinking about how do we get there? Like, how do we find out what places people like? These are MSAs of a similar size to Omaha, and they are, I put the net domestic migration positive and the net domestic migration negative. So we don't want to be like them. We do want to be like that group. Albany, Birmingham, Tucson, Tulsa, Greenville, Knoxville, and then Florida. Don't even try to be like a Florida city. Like, just let it go. Okay, but anybody been to any of those cities? Similar sizes, but they're doing something that's attracting population. What do you think? If you've been there or been to one, call it out.
So maybe like 10, 15 years ago, I went to Tulsa, and they were taking a lot of their older buildings, and like 100-year-old buildings, turning them and revitalizing them, encouraging businesses to move in there, turning them into event spaces.
Love that. Anybody else been to one of these? Scream it out. So event spaces. All right, the Tulsa housing program, I'm not for. We'll talk about that offline. But we can't drag people one person at a time. That's not population growth. It's fun. It gets a lot of attention. It is bringing people, but I'm not for programs one at a time. So I happened to find that I was truly just like, what does aesthetics look like? And so, but this is what really got me. That picture up in the corner, does that look like anywhere in Omaha to y'all? Yeah. Where? Everywhere. Fair. I was thinking Dodge and then like Center down at like 50th Street, but like that was in the 1970s. by 1979, Greenville looked like the one on the left. Does Dodge look like the one on the left? That was in 1979. This is it today. Now, Old Market's beautiful. I'm not fighting with it, right? But this is this is called Main Street through Greenville, right? That dynamic, Greenville actually is just more recently popping off in terms of that numbers. But they built that environment that retained that population, and then folks went, okay, I'm into it. It wasn't always what it is today, but they started a long time ago compared to us. The other one that Richard Florida mentioned was openness. In this young professional survey, remember when I said, like, when everybody says something, you believe them? 77%, that was similar to that 78%, said focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace is a good thing. I didn't say it, y'all said it, right? I'm very comfortable coming back to y'all to say, it is about openness. Like, you know what I don't want to feel at work? Bad about myself, right? Or like that I'm going to get teased and picked on and like outed, right? I want to have a good time at work. So of course, openness, inclusion, diversity, equity. It is a part of the culture here in Omaha, but to a lesser extent in perception than in importance. So there is work to be done between us to make this place a great place to live. And then, right, just that overall quality of life, those other factors, the area aesthetics, right, those things really matter. Those places to meet and get together. We do okay on those, like entertainment, restaurant, bars, and parks and trails. I was a little surprised, but great, people are happy. Young professionals, at least from this survey, are fairly happy in these areas that really do matter. But I was talking to Channel 3 back there, right? Just places and spaces that you can come together, share in that openness, enjoy that built environment or the outdoors, and feel good, right? And just thinking about how do we create those spaces for everybody. And I think that is so much of what I have heard about the comp plan. So I'm really excited to get into the panel and discuss some of these other factors. Again, Center for Public Affairs Research, you can join our email list or please follow us on LinkedIn. We are posting lots of research on this topic all the time. Thank y'all.
I feel like I should shake your hand. You did pretty good. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Schafer. I'm going to invite you back up here as well as our other panelists. Somehow we got the high chairs, so we're all going to struggle to sit on these, and please be kind and patient with us. As we meander up here, I want to start to introduce them all. Dr. Dell Gines is the Chief Innovation Officer of the International Economic Development Council. He leads professional development, research, emerging practices, and international strategy to help economic developers use technology to strengthen local economies. Tammy Green is the Executive Director of Statewide Initiatives at MCC. That's Metropolitan Community College. Tammy leads collaborative efforts that connect education, industry, and community partners to strengthen Nebraska's talent pipeline. And Laurel Oetken, the Vice President of Operations at Open Range, and my fellow young professional. With a background spanning tech and startup leadership, public-private partnerships, and nonprofit work, Laurel is building a startup ecosystem at Open Range that empowers Omaha and Lincoln founders, connects builders to resources, and creates new pathways to start, build, and scale ideas here in Omaha. Please give them a warm welcome. So I will introduce our panel, and you'll also please be very patient with me. I've never moderated a panel before, so I do have notes. Tonight, rather than asking, how do we fix brain drain, instead we're going to ask a different question. We're going to ask, how do we build the kind of place that people choose to stay in, where they want to grow their lives, where they want to make their dreams a reality. The comp plan's guiding principles that you've all seen give us that shared vision to kind of build on, but now we want to turn the conversation to enacting that as a strategy for economic development. So we met a couple weeks ago just to prep for this call. I was blown away with their openness and honesty. So I want to let you know, just in the spirit of this being an open conversation, that there is no pre-approved message for tonight. We have not prepped them with, like, here's what you should say, or you need to only say this thing. We've asked them to be candid and transparent with you in the spirit of building a collaborative, solutions-oriented kind of new set of momentum here tonight. So with that, I am going to deviate a little bit from the questions that I prepared, just to give us kind of a set standard. When we talk about economic development, I would love for you all to define what you see that as meaning and ways that you see that needing to change as we move into this next phase of Omaha's growth. Dr. Gines, we can start with you.
Yeah, first of all, you got me out past my bedtime, so I drank a Rain energy drink, and I kind of shaky because of the caffeine. But that's actually an excellent question, and I'm going to preface it by actually being contrarian to most of you and asking the question, why does Omaha need to grow? And I would argue it doesn't. You know, it's kind of a hegemonic economic development philosophy of the United States, that this consistent obsession with growth, and actually nationally we're starting to see a lot of pushback. And so I think we're asking the wrong question when we look at opportunity as the growth of population, and we need to reprioritize it as the growth of quality of life. So think about the economy as an equation. You know, Dr. Schafer showed, you know, the relative landlock of Omaha. Well, if you increase population, you put pressure on housing prices because of demand, which then reduces the quality of life if you don't correspondingly increase wages to cover the cost. If you talk about the lack of a transportation and infrastructure, and now you increase population on top of already influx or broken system, now everybody's mad. You got more potholes. You got more congestion. All of the things that I don't want to see in Nebraska. I don't want to be like in Atlanta where I have to drive 20 minutes to get a mile, right? So the point that I'm making is not that growth is necessary, good or bad. It's that we need to actually question our assumptions of perpetual growth as the ultimate objective versus how we choose to experience place and make people experience place, which gets me into the economic development definition. So, you know, I've been pushing hard in the field. So my job at IEDC is basically, we're the largest professional association of economic developers in the world. And so I'm kind of like the future caster for the field. And my job is to prepare the field of economic developers as a profession to be able to look at what's coming and to be able to prepare for it. And one of the things that my baby is our Economic Development 101 class. And one of the things that I always point out when we talk about definitions is the fact that we historically have got the definition, I would argue, wrong. So we talk about economic development as a function of increasing job opportunities, tax base, capital investment, and quality of life. And like I tell people, you can't eat money. Money is the intermediary to get to something that you want, right? So I want McDonald's, so I give them $1. I'm not eating $1, I'm eating McDonald's. Economic development is a proxy for something else. And I argue that it is a proxy for the improvement of quality of life for the maximum number of people in a given population that you could have. Now, if you start with that definition and reverse engineer back into how you achieve that goal, you have a dramatically different set of strategic engagement with economic development than what you would have if you said, well, our primary objective is to create jobs, which is what you see when you go and you look at most economic developers' annual reports. We landed how many companies? How many times have you heard that in a newspaper in an annual report? How many companies have we landed? How many jobs have you created? How much capital have we got invested within our community? But we very rarely see, unless it's an external facing research piece that says, how do you feel about where you live? And how does that attach back to those metrics that are reported out in the economic developer's goal? So I argue that the best definition of economic development from my perspective, and there is no standard definition of it. My whole literature review was on a history of local economic development for my dissertation. And the definition has actually changed over time. But I argue that any definition that doesn't lead with the fact that the objective of economic development is the improvement of quality of life for the maximum number of people within a given geographic area is a flawed definition because it dehumanizes economic development and makes it instrumental all about money. And I believe that Americans deserve a better form of development. And I use that Americans line because maybe one day when I'm like 90, I'll be a politician.
All right, have a good night, everyone. No, that's exactly the stage I was hoping to set here, because I think when we talk about traditional economic development, maybe the way we understand it from the newspaper or the way we understand it from reports, it's small, isolated kind of wins. And what I heard this group talk about in our prep call was more of a desire for something like an ecosystem. So something that not only attracts companies, but also attracts talent. And I kind of want to pitch it to our resident entrepreneurial gal here on the panel to talk about what that ecosystem of support looks like when you're looking at people who are trying to grow their business or their dream here.
You bet. Thanks, Dell, for being so hard to follow on a panel. I would say my background, just for the good of the group, I'm a local Nebraskan, grew up here in Omaha, and I'm one of, I would say, many young professionals that chose to stay here in Nebraska. I'm bullish on Omaha for a lot of reasons, but a big part of that is really the opportunity that I see in the entrepreneurial community. I've been fortunate to both work in tech startups and also now support them through the organization that I am a big part of, and I think that this is where a lot of those net new jobs are coming from. If you look at surrounding cities, the Kauffman Foundation is based in Kansas City. They typically say that almost 90 to 94% of net new jobs come from new companies that are younger than 5 years. So when you think about the opportunities that that presents for your young professionals, myself included, and folks that want to work in environments that I would say challenge the cultural norm from a workplace standpoint, you really have so much tremendous opportunity in those organizations and businesses that are young. For me, I think that the piece that sometimes is missing in a community like Omaha is the ecosystem that brings people together and provides that community-based aspect to the jobs that those individuals are taking. I'm fortunate to have a front row seat to that. Our organization, in a lot of ways, was really created to cultivate that sense of ecosystem and community, but really it comes down to how are we bringing entrepreneurs together, how are we limiting barriers that exist in our community, and really trying to foster a sense of, I would say, opportunity and openness. You talked a lot about that, Josie, in the opening remarks, but that's very true for entrepreneurs to be successful here. And when I talk about entrepreneurship, right, you have to have a good mix, I would say, of companies that are truly on that high growth spectrum where they're creating those high paying jobs, where you hopefully see the migration inward in Omaha, but you need small businesses as well, so your kind of main street businesses to really see that ecosystem and that flywheel take off. Dell has spent a ton of time on this topic too with his research and work, but for me it's the opportunity to see a lot of that come together, and I really do think that in Omaha too we're starting to see a trend where that ecosystem feels a bit more alive. When I started my career in Omaha now about 10 years ago, if you would have asked me where do I go if I'm going to start a business, I would have said maybe back to college, right? To figure out what that secondary degree is that I would need to really pursue that. Today, I think it's as simple as you make one connection in our community and you're open to several, I would say 20 different resources right off the bat that can really get you started. Several of those folks are in the audience today, so if you're interested in starting and scaling a business, please come find me. But I would say that there's so much more opportunity here that has really taken off even in the last 2 to 3 years, where if you do have a big idea, there are opportunities for you to scale that here. And I do think that that's where we need to be a bit more bullish, like me and my perspective on Omaha, and sharing that story outwardly so that we see more people want to start and want to scale their businesses here.
What kind of functional infrastructure, like placemaking or like access to capital or those kind of social supports, and this is open for the entire panel, what do you see there that we can kind of build momentum on, and then where are we just not competing with our other Midwestern peers to support whether it's an entrepreneur or someone who is looking to build their career?
You know, one of the things that we talk a lot about is the wages. Wages are a big thing. But I think also we need to talk about where are the actual jobs in a workforce ecosystem. If we've got the majority of our population who has a bachelor's degree or higher, and they come out and they finish that and they can't find a job, or when they do find a job, They can't pay for the education they just received. It's not what they wanted to do. That's a problem. If you look at BLS data, or Bureau of Labor Statistics, you'll discover that there are more people with bachelor's degree and higher than there are jobs that require that. Same thing is happening in that ecosystem for entry-level jobs. Where we have lost in that workforce ecosystem, where we have lost that power is in that mid-levels. So when people are going and they're working, they want a better life. They want to be able to put food on their table. And there should be an expectation that in our community, that if you're going to be working a full-time job and a part-time job, there should be an awareness that you should be able to pay your rent. You should be able to have a car that actually works. You should be able to pay your utilities, put food on the table, and not worry about whether or not you're going to have health care and be able to take care of your children. It should be an expectation in Omaha. And so that middle level of jobs is really becoming a critical component that we have to build. There was a time where that was, you worked hard and you could make a living wage. Might not be rich, you might not be going to Tahiti every quarter, but you could put food on the table and take care of your family. And that is not the case anymore. It just is not. And that we should be worried about. As much as we are worried about parks and as much as we are worried about walking trails, which are all very important. I like a good walking trail. I like to feel, part of a community. But if people can't afford the home that they're living in or their utilities or $1,000 a month because it's a poorly built home, those are things that we should really, really be concerned about.
And that's something we hear over and over in our community engagement that we do for the comp plan. It's something that shows up in the national data again and again. The top factors that people are considering more than they're considering having, a NFL football team here. It's access to transportation options. That's transit, that's walking, it's biking, and housing affordability. Open to all the panelists. I'd love to start with Dr. Schafer. What are you seeing across other communities in the Midwest as far as how they're addressing some of these things? And do you kind of just anecdotally see that correlating with those mid-range job options?
Yeah, so I am a little more focused on that higher end, with those higher wage jobs, with the idea, who knew I was going to be like the most conservative person on a panel? Right, but I'm going to talk about trickle-down economics. I can't imagine how this has become my life. But when those higher wage jobs have more money to go out and spend, they spend it on goods and services that support those lower wage jobs, hopefully bringing up the wages of those jobs, if the market works. Markets don't always work, but that is the concept, right? So I do maintenance on my house. I have more money, so I do high-end maintenance on my house. I pay my contractor more. I go out to eat at restaurants, and I tip better, right? That would be the concept. I try. So I do think we are seeing more targeted economic development to those higher wage jobs in the region. I think Des Moines, everyone's like, Des Moines can't be better, but look at a couple of those metrics that I shared and they're doing something right. And I think it is more of a focus on an innovation economy, and so not just the high wage jobs, but jobs that are producing things of high value and creating new things that people are excited to be a part of, getting into that entrepreneurship space. I'm really I'm on an R&D kick right now. We don't spend a lot as a state on R&D. Industries don't spend a lot on R&D, and I think that just makes work less fun, right, if we're not that innovative epicenter. So, and that isn't public policy. Again, that happens between us all and the ecosystem saying hey, we want to have fun at work. We want to create something new at work. I do think people are, incentives are ubiquitous. I don't think they actually change the game by any means, but are people still playing that game? Yeah, they are. I think there's been a lot more movement in economic development around placemaking and economic mobility as a focus, and I think that all sort of makes a lot of sense. But it's hard to know where to start. And, with these big, broad definitions of economic development and what other places are doing, right? Like, if Greenville started that in 1979, like, we're so off. We're going to have to think of something else. Like, we can't just make Dodge look better and call it a day. And so I really, I push people to think about the uniqueness of this place and what we have to offer and what value we can create, and to start economic development there versus just what other places are doing.
And that was something that came up in that prep call that we had. There are, yes, Dr. Schafer was not there. We talked a lot about how there are long-term gains that we can make in placemaking that do have this impact on creating a sense of place and on economic development. Some of the things that you kind of popcorned out earlier, the revitalization of historic buildings into workforce spaces. But those are long-term investments in a generational change. And I think a lot of us, myself included, want to see change now and in our working lifetime. So Dr. Gines, you kind of brought this up in that prep call, but what are some of those early action pieces that we can kind of tag onto some of these more long-term infrastructure changes that build that active ecosystem, bringing companies here and bringing talented people here?
Yeah, and so Bridget Hadley, with her head down looking at her phone, she wrote me into being on the mayor's economic development work group along with Aaron Porterfield and others. And the point that I kept asking and pushing on is what does the mayor want the city to be? Like, there's historically has been no real vision for what the city wants to be, so it's very hard to coalesce a very strong ecosystem around it. We've had some organic and industry advantages through our clusters and other factors that made us, relatively strong economy consistently over the years, but now that we're seeing challenges to that, we don't really know what to do. It's like somebody that's always been the strongest person in the room, then they have a stronger person, and now they gotta, they're not the bully anymore. Not saying that Omaha's the bully because we're Nebraska nice, but you get the point that I'm making, right? So, now that we have to actually figure things out, it requires us to have a higher level of intentionality with who we want to be as a community as a whole. We can't just rest on our laurels, our industry advantages, and other factors that kind of historically have created, pretty strong, Omaha-based economy. Not for everybody, not for black people, not for the community I lived in, but if you look at the headline numbers, in general, it has been that way. And so, I would say that first we need to start with leadership and vision and really develop a strong, cohesive vision for what we want the city of Omaha to be, both within 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Because that vision alone allows people to see where they fit in. It allows us to create compelling stories. It allows us to help organize our marketing and whether we're doing recruitment or retention. It allows us to support our entrepreneurs in the ecosystem and coalesce resources at, let's say, the university policy and other levels. Because without that, what you have is kind of what we've seen historically in Omaha is kind of like this shotgun scattered approach. Oh yeah, let's go ahead and build a bike trail over here and improve transportation over here and maybe dip our toe into some ecosystem work over here, right? But we need all of those to be able to coalesce around a solid, stable vision that we can continually champion, whether we're championing in the city or somebody like me who, does work outside of the city can say, this is why Omaha we're not there yet, but this is where we're trying to get to, and this is where the cool kids come to play, so this is where you need to come. Functionally, I would argue the work that she's doing is the most important work. I've always said entrepreneurship is the tip of the spear for the very reasons that she said and other reasons. So, again, the majority of net new jobs are created by high growth 0 to 5-year-old companies, right? But then also once you go down the entrepreneurship spectrum to gig and other work economies, those are your amenity creators, those are your additional revenue generators, all of those other factors. Omaha has always been very tepid in terms of how it develops and supports the entrepreneurship ecosystem. It's always been hit or miss. The chamber will hire somebody and then they'll leave. The chamber will hire somebody, then they'll leave. You know, when I started with the Kansas City Fed in 2011, I was so excited because we were going to see all of these cool, you know, entrepreneurship things, microfinance. Because at that point in time, Omaha had about 8 different organizations that served microfinance and small businesses that served the eastern side of Nebraska. I would go up to Kansas City, they had 0 and they were starting 1. And I was like, you got to be crazy. How's Omaha so much further ahead? But fast forward 10 years later, Omaha ended up reducing to about 2 to 3. Kansas City had explosive growth in their entrepreneurship ecosystem because Mayor Sly James said we want to be the most entrepreneurial city in the nation. They had existing assets in Kaufman. Google Fiber came in, and people were rallying around that vision, including SourceLink that was there. And now if you go there, they are infinitely ahead of where Omaha was as a city in just a decade. And so it starts with that vision and leadership. It starts with defining who we want to be. It starts with leveraging the energy that entrepreneurs create, because it's easier to do that than to restructure your industry cluster. Like, that's very, very hard. And we have a strong industry cluster that is going to be difficult to pivot, but I think there's some other things that we can do. I don't want to dominate the panel, but if you take anything from what I said, it's vision, leadership, entrepreneurship is the tip of the spear.
And I would add entrepreneurship, not in just pockets of Omaha, right? So celebrating and creating access to entrepreneurship across the state, not just in the map that had one little area of land space that we could develop out, but how do we create those spaces throughout the entire city? You know, I'm a transplant from Colorado, and I'll talk about the elephant in the room. It was the weirdest thing that we had North Omaha, and we had South Omaha, and then we had people in Ralston who never drove to Omaha. And I was just shocked because coming from Colorado, I'm like, what do you mean? 20 minutes, you know? That's going around the corner in Denver, so that is weird. Well, we've created these dynamics where when we talk about entrepreneurship, well, we talk about it in downtown Omaha. We talk about it in Millard, or we talk about it in certain pockets. And there are areas that we need to create access to entrepreneurship. We need to celebrate that entrepreneurship in that area. And then I agree with you, Dell, we need a vision for what we're going to do in that area of all of Omaha. And what does it look like? Not just the open small amount of land that we have, and not just moving, you know, west or up to Bennington, but actually embracing the incredibleness that is Omaha.
I mean, I would maybe just add to that, raise of hands in the audience, how many of you have ventured to Millwork Commons before? What about the new Catalyst development area? I mean, this is probably, again, back to what you said earlier, out of the norm for an audience, but when you have pockets that are really encouraging that entrepreneurial and innovative thinking, I think people tend to congregate around that. But those are 2 examples, right, that don't touch all of the aspects of Omaha. And, you know, I typically would say, too, what's good for Omaha should also be good for western Nebraska, some of the eastern parts of the state, and trying to attract people from Council Bluffs area as well. We I think, need to do a better job, honestly, about talking about those opportunities. But I think you're exactly right in the sense that we have, for whatever reason, continued to push community in certain pockets and continue to think that innovation can only happen in certain subsets of the community. And I think that it's important to recognize where some of those pockets of natural innovation are happening, but we need to do a better job of evangelizing that and also bringing others in the community into that. And I would say, too, you have to be bold enough to also say we need to meet people where they're at in our community. Entrepreneurship can happen anywhere, and I think it's important to recognize that and call attention to it. But I think it's also important to continue to retain talent where they want to grow those businesses.
This is an interesting segue into a question I really wanted to ask you, Tammy, and then I'd love everyone to pitch in. When we talk about entrepreneurship, when we talk about growth in business, I think a lot of us have a picture of what that looks like. It's maybe someone in a suit, or it's maybe someone behind a laptop, and they're growing a business here. But when you look at the data and you look at who's leaving and who we're losing, it's also in the trades. And so when we look at the built environment, who is going to help us create this future to build this growth and innovation that we want to see? How do we continue to build not an education to employment pipeline, but a system and a network that is self-sustaining?
So we're talking about economy, right? And when you're looking at the entire ecosystem of work and the nature of jobs, you know, we've been looking at major companies, and, you know, anywhere from 60 to 70% of a company is going to be your technicians. Well, that's where we need to really start focusing our skills, because people can get an associate's degree, get a credential, and move into those skilled jobs and actually make a living wage as long as we can get them that access to that. We have focused, and please know I'm not, you know, I'm a product of a higher education, and I am 100% on board for that. But I think sometimes in our education system, we're not starting with the right question, like Dell said. Making sure that we're aware of starting with the question of, what do you want to do? What do you like to do? And what do you want to make? And how do we start getting you there? Rather than saying, are you going to go get your bachelor's degree and then come out and go, I did, but what was true 15, 20 years ago about getting a degree in anything is no longer true today. So understanding that starting with the right question helps build our economy. What do you like to do? What do you want to do? What are your talents? What are your skills? And let's get you access to education. And then I'm also big on trades as one of the most powerful tools to build the middle class. You know, one of the reasons we're starting to see that drop out is because we didn't focus for a long time on building that middle class and getting access to that, those mid-level positions, and that's where we got to grow. That's where, if you look at BLS data, that's where, when we're talking about there are more jobs than human bodies to fill, it's in the middle class. It's in those mid-skilled jobs.
Can I contradict myself real quick? So remember with that data, right, like it's a median. So what makes someone in a mid-wage job earn at the top? And that's skills, right? That's entrepreneurial spirit in the individual. That's leadership in the individual. That's skill development in the individual. That's professional development in the individual. And when people skill up in any job, they create more value, right? We pay them more because they're doing something that makes this job totally innovative, totally great. So I think, yes, I'm focused on those occupations. Yes, I'm focused on research and innovation economy, which is in there. But an electrician that doesn't just put in electrical outlet, but totally rethinks how they could do this better, or train someone in a totally new way so they become better, that is also really exciting to me. Folks that are in those trades and pushing those trades in new ways is really exciting to me, and that's skill development. And so investing in individuals to grow their skills here, investing in the anchor institutions that are supporting people to grow their skills here is really important to me. When someone leaves and grows their economic and social network somewhere else, they're not going to be as likely to come back. So how do we grow them here? And how do we support them here? And I think that's where folks are less bullish on Omaha. They think you got to go somewhere to get what you need. No, right here, there are amazing institutions that are helping people to skill up and do any job in a great, innovative, and new way, and sustain this economy and grow from within. And I think I think economic development needs to focus on that skill development keep going back to that definition.
You know, one of the things I was just going to kind of add to that, I was thinking about one of the projects I was working on for trying to get access to chips and science. Incredible amount of research, design, and what was the most interesting thing in that dynamic, and the reason why the Omaha area lost out on it and Nebraska lost out on it, was not because we didn't have the R&D, and not because we didn't have the researchers and the work that could go into those high levels. It's because when they looked at a chips and science facility, about 30% of those jobs needed those engineers. They needed the R&D. The other 70% was the technicians. It was the folks that were at that level, and that when we're talking about that ecosystem, those skills, they're a value of one of the most valuable resources that we can start to build in our community.
Can I maybe add just I don't know if this is contradictory statement, but I think it's also important, especially all of you that are in the audience, that I know likely have jobs that you're going to go to, whether that's in a corporate environment, nonprofit environment. I hate to bring this up, but I do think we have to acknowledge too how artificial intelligence is going to shift jobs as we know it, especially when you think about that high skill, high wage opportunity, and thinking about how you train individuals better, whether that's in a collegiate institution, community college setting, or even in the workplace, to leverage that as a skill set. I think what's been eye-opening for me, honestly, especially having exposure to those entrepreneurs that are trying to start really high-tech, high-growth businesses, is that they're doing it with the leveraging of AI to take their idea, get it ready for commercialization significantly faster than you would have even seen 9 months ago. So I do think we have to acknowledge that, and I would implore all of you as individuals that are in the workforce to start thinking about how do you help young professionals in your work environment better leverage those as tools, be innovative by using that as a tool, again, to do their jobs better, and to make, as Josie mentioned, work fun, right? Because I think that that's an important part of the retention-based aspect that is a big part of that overarching flywheel and creating that larger workplace ecosystem, innovation ecosystem that Omaha desperately needs to continue to grow.
Yeah, and so when I explain my job, I use Wayne Gretzky's quote about why he was so great. Wayne Gretzky is a hockey player for you young kids, right? Greatest of all time. So they said, what's your secret to success? He said, I always try to skate to where the puck is going to be versus where it is. And so we're not gonna win, the Omaha game if we say, well, this is what we have, and let's just focus on that. We have to look at where it's going. So I'm so glad you brought up artificial intelligence, because that's one of our big lifts. Is like that is such a disruptive technology that is going to transform. I mean, honestly, to a degree, I'm like, why are we even having this conversation? In 5 years, robots are going to take our jobs, right? Maybe not that much, but the level of disruption is high. So how do you position the Omaha community to get to your point about innovation and research? So Omaha and Nebraska as a whole has really good bones. Anybody watch those housing shows where they're flipping houses and the house has good bones? Meaning that, the foundation is really strong. We're really strong. Like you look at the educational institutions in general, you look at the broader based environment, you look at the people, like we have good bones. The thing is that we don't know how to flip the house, right? We don't have the ability to do the things necessary to make that house, create positive growth in the marketplace, if you will. You keep with that metaphor. But we have everything that's it takes to do it. And so I would argue that because again, to your point, when I worked at the Fed, President Esther George said 2 ways economies grow: through population growth and innovation, right? So if you want to lean into that, even if you're in traditional industries, there's no traditional industry that cannot be enhanced through innovation. Innovation and new technology is what drives productivity. Productivity is what drives economic growth. And so what we want to focus on as a city, and also I agree, we do not do a good enough job of connecting the whole state and connecting the assets across the state. What we want to do as the city is say, big vision, what do we want to be, leadership around it, entrepreneurship as kind of the energetic arm, but then look at the industries and say, how do we position Omaha to leverage innovation to increase productivity that is distributed across a broad majority of the population so we all can eat? And we're not talking about my historic community in North Omaha is perpetually being broke and South Omaha not far behind, but everybody can participate in that innovation and productivity. And then you look at the rising tide does lift all boats. And so that's where I would lean. That's where, well, I would say it's bottom up, trickle down economics meeting in the middle. Because when you focus on entrepreneurship, you know, your capacity to generate growth is agnostic to the population. You know, by that I mean innovation does not have a gender, it does not have a race. It has a context and it has an opportunity. And we do not do a good job of providing a context and an opportunity across a wide spectrum of our community to be able to be innovative. And then I would love to see Black trickle-down economics, Latino trickle-down economics, women trickle-down economics, so that we're the ones that get to do the trickling. Because we never get to trickle. We always are opening our mouth waiting for the water to fall, right? So I think just everybody has been pushing on kind of like the same energy in different ways. And I think that's what's going to get us over the top.
I have one final question because I'm struck by a common thread in all of your answers as we've kind of navigated these questions. And we do have 3 more questions for you as well if you're able to stick around. We started about 10 minutes late, so if you can give me another 10 minutes at the end, we want to hear from you. What I'm struck by is ownership being a common thread in all of these things, no matter what we're talking about, jobs, workforce, entrepreneurship. But the connection of place in ownership, providing that context, providing people to align with a localized vision of what being from somewhere means to me. And whether that's what being from Omaha means to you, or what being from, living in Benson means to me, or what living in North Omaha means to you, or being from South Omaha. How can you align that? If you're going to innovate anyway, how can you align that love for place with here? So we're going to prep that first question, get ready for that. But what do you see that key action being in connecting ownership and place as we move into this planning effort?
I have a quick answer. Invest in people in Omaha, right? Make people in Omaha feel great about being part of the Omaha community. Buy local, invest in local institutions, drive growth here. Also, does anyone know what the top 2 high demand jobs are? Solar and wind installers. It's tech innovation.
I think my answer to that, especially having that young professional mindset, is invest in future generations. And I think that starts at the K through 6th grade level, and thinking about how do we encourage people to think differently at younger ages, and how does that translate into educational opportunity and output across the community. But also when you think about that first job that someone has, investing in a pathway forward and that career growth opportunity, I think is important. That's something that I care a lot about and have deeply experienced, but I think it's important for everyone that wants to stay here to do that. But I would echo Josie's comment too, that I think it's really important to take pride in the community that we live in and to support the business that exists here.
I think it's funny that we're all talking human, because I think what makes us want to be here is it's that human aspect. And so when I think about those opportunities, what makes people want to be here is when they feel welcomed to be here, right? When you're celebrating each other, you're celebrating the community, and you're welcoming people to be here, you're welcoming people to stay, and you're welcoming those transplants from Colorado or from Tulsa or from anywhere, when you're welcoming people and creating that space. And that's one of the most beautiful things I think about Omaha. When I look at my neighborhood, why do I love my neighborhood? Well, I love my neighborhood because the entire street has freaking garage bars. Like, nobody goes out to the bars on Friday night. They pop up their garage, and there's a garage bar everywhere. And they just walk up and down the aisles, just saying hello to the neighbors. And that is such a cool thing. Why do people love Benson? Why do people love the downtown area? It's because it's welcoming. It's because, gosh darn, the doors are open, the windows are up, we're all walking up and down the streets, and we're creating space for each other and welcoming each other to be here. And I personally think it's one of the most beautiful things about Omaha. You should all have garage bars. I'd love it. I'd go visit you every day.
And for those non-car centric folks in the room, the walkability, the downtown, building those places that really create that energy. Dr. Gines, you want to cap us off here?
Yeah, well, people live in place, right? People are not a job. They're not. You can't bifurcate or stratify a person, right? We exist within, within our built environment, our psychological environment, our relational environment, all of those things. And economic development tends to lose aspect of that, and so we tend to segment things into workforce, entrepreneurship, all of those things. But it's a real person that experiences all those things at any given moment every day of their life. And so if we want to make Omaha a place that is celebrated, then we need something to celebrate, right? We need a vision that we can say either this is what we are, or this is where we're going, and we're working together for it. So then I can stop going around the nation like I used to when I was at the Fed and call Omaha a tale of two cities. Every time I talk about Omaha, I say, how do you have Warren Buffett and then one of the poorest black communities in the nation? I would say that, right? And why would I say that? Because that's what Omaha did to us. And I was speaking reality based upon data in context of what the broader, strong economic environment was. And I say, how does this happen? Bad economic development. So for me, it becomes an issue of how do we create an aspirational vision that encompasses and gets our arms around everybody in the city, that everybody feels that they have a part to play or can play, that they can celebrate, they can hold up the Omaha flag when they leave the city and say, yeah, we're not there yet, but we're going to get there. And then you reverse engineer back into that. You create dynamic environments through entrepreneurship, creative placemaking. We have major employers that I feel want to be more participatory, but they don't know how. So we give them a space to do it, anchor institutions, educational institutions, all of these things. And now they know where to put their energy. Because right now they really don't. Like they may want to put their energy in a streetcar, and a streetcar could be cool, but there's a difference between the psychological geography and the built assets. And they do connect to each other. But we need to, as much as we can, create an aspirational vision that anybody, whether it's West Omaha, North Omaha, South Omaha, downtown, whatever, say, this is my Omaha, this is what I'm working towards, and it's going to be so cool. Or when we have those successes, then turn around and say, see, we said we wanted to be like this, and we're still getting there, and this is why I can point to this. Right now, it's really hard to do any of that, and I don't know, we got a lot of people that have been in Omaha for a minute. I can't remember ever a time that I could, which is sad to say, and I'm 22 years old now, so.
All right. Big thank you for our panelists offering their candor. That kind of rallying call for vision and for us to all centralize around that vision, I think, is the perfect segue back to the comprehensive plan. Those guiding principles, 9 statements that our community developed creatively, collaboratively together, things like belonging and ownership, things like beauty and vibrancy, growth and innovation, diversity and partnership, these aspirational statements that become the basis for growth and for changing the way that we think about development and growth in this city. I would love to just offer those up for all of you and for our community to be that centralized vision for what that looks like. A couple questions for you if you still have time. We want to know from you if this was additive for your understanding of economic development, your understanding of talent attraction and retention. I think Abe's working on getting these up here. Yeah, what was something new and interesting that you learned tonight? I'll read a couple of them off. You can move through these at your own pace. The importance of innovation. Greater Des Moines being a competitor. Abe, would you page to the next one? Oh yeah, panelists, if you don't want to crane your heads around, you feel free to. What actions can we take? Part of this event tonight is meant to inspire some collaboration here. So there's a lot that we can do from the comp plan to start to build the infrastructure that provides the context for innovation and growth. But there's a lot that we can all do together. So from your own perspective, from your own locus of control, the levers that you can pull, the influence that you have, what are ways that you can be a collaborative part of the solution? Yeah. Create, support, welcome others. Establish policy, it's absolutely what we want to do. All right. With that, I want to encourage everyone, please stay connected to the planning process. There are going to be more opportunities to engage. We are working on growth goals and strategies right now for the plan. We'll be moving into scenario planning, which starts to look at possible futures for Omaha and how we can make them a reality. And we'll be engaging with the community again this spring to do some decision making around what that looks like. The way that you can stay connected to that process is through our website, wemakeomaha.org. Sign up for newsletters on our website. You'll be the first to know anytime there's a new opportunity. And if you've caught the bug for this process and the excitement and you want to join us, reach out through our contact form. We have so many opportunities for you to help us spread the word, to get involved, and to be aligned with the cool stuff that we're doing. So with that, please get home. Yes? We are currently looking at the end of 2026 or early 2027. Yep.
Really quick, can the audience just give Sydney a huge round of applause? She did such a fantastic job moderating.
I also want to thank the rest of our team, too, that have made this possible. The We Make Omaha team members from the city of Omaha are here. Mark McLaughlin, I see you. Bridget Headley, I see you. Eric England, I see you. I think there are some others. And our team at Omaha by Design, thank you so much for everything you've done. With that, have a great night. Get home safely.